And here we are with week 6. We're talking about location shooting, safety workflows, and checklists. Last week we talked about pre-production planning, and this week we are continuing with a deep dive into location shooting, where we talk about all of these different types of paperwork. Project paperwork, you're going to want a script plan. This can be a simple table that you create in a document with script sections on the right and your audio, video, and graphics plan on the left. You can create your shot list from this. Your shooting schedule, have everything lined up with your dates, times, and locations. Make sure you have insurance and permits if you need those. Your equipment checklist, if you take it, it's got to be on the list. Don't lose expensive gear. And your shot list. This is based on your creative brief, pre-visualizations, and pictures that the business owner may send you if it's in a distant location from you. That they may just want to send pictures ahead of time to give you an idea of what the place looks like, so you can plan for the lighting conditions and make sure that you take media releases. Basically, all this needs to be is a sheet of paper that says, "I consent to all reproduction of my image without limits, sign it and date it." You're going to want to plan for equipment handling. That's something often called bag wrangling, where you have staging areas to take your bags. You're going to want to use professional padded equipment bags if possible. They sell these at filmtools.com, and these are organized. You can photo bags. Sometimes these are big duffel bags. Camera bags that you rent will also often have. If you can't afford these, then I recommend a black gym or duffel bag, using towels for padding to keep everything quiet and safe as you transport things from place to place. Limit your load-in baggage. Try to get it all together with just a few trips or one trip if possible to get all of your equipment in. And you're going to want to keep small items together in smaller bags, plastic bags. You can use gallon Ziploc bags. Plastic boxes, this is for like batteries, SD cards, compact flash cards, media cards. Carry a thumb drive with you so they can copy any sort of digital assets they have, like logos, pictures, or video from their computer onto your thumb drive rather than having to email it. And then any other odds and ends in a small box. You're going to want to do a safety check, and I'll go into this more later. It's a good idea to bring a first aid kit just in case anything happens. You need a Band-Aid or something like that. You accidentally cut yourself. It's good to have a first aid kit. Bring some quick energy snacks and water bottles for a longer shoot so that you don't have to stop and eat lunch. Bring personal medications if you're using those and if they're on a schedule, but don't forget their personal medications. And it's a good idea to wear darker, non-reflective clothing so you don't see yourself in your own B-roll shots. And very often a ball cap with a visor for shade. That helps you see your camera monitor. An overview of the workflow. The basic workflow from beginning to end is you arrive at the door, you unload your equipment, take it inside, park your car. Sometimes you might use a portable hand truck or a hand cart. Go in, announce yourself to the receptionist or person inside the business. Let them know you're here, who you are and who you're with, and sometimes the owner can come out and let everybody know. They should have let them know ahead of time. And ask for a staging area location, someplace you can take your gear to unpack to keep it out of the way. Then do your safety check, and while you're doing that, scout for your main interview location and look for good B-roll. Then you're going to want to set up for your main interview or start getting B-roll until the subject of your main interview is ready. You're going to want to shoot B-roll and on-site impromptu testimonials if possible, and make sure to get those media releases signed when you do those. As you're shooting B-roll, you're going to want to shoot active interviews using wireless microphones. Anticipate where your subject is going to be and move ahead of that person so that you get them coming towards you rather than following from behind. You're going to want to frame active interviews. That's an interview where you've got a wireless microphone and they're talking and possibly doing something. Sometimes you can shift slightly so that there's an interesting foreground element, like if you're at a garden shop, you might have some blurry flowers out of focus in the foreground while they're talking in focus in the background. You're going to want to shoot wide, medium, tight sequences. Look for action, reaction. Look for moments, emotional moments. Action, reaction. If someone's looking at something, get a little bit of video of them looking at something, and then over the shoulder that they're looking, see what they're looking at, and get that action, reaction combo. You're going to want to shoot your main sit-down interview and any secondary interviews that are in the same spot. You're going to want to go through your shot list and make sure that you haven't forgotten anything, especially if it was discussed in the creative brief. Also check to see if anything has changed since your initial discussions, if there's anything else that they want you to film, and add that to your shot list. Also, make sure to check and see if there's anything they don't want shot, if there are any areas that they prefer that you don't, because if you just go around shooting randomly, you might get a location that is not too attractive, or for some reason they prefer that you don't shoot that area, and then you end up having to edit out of the final video, and that's an edit that would be avoided if you had asked ahead. Finally, you're going to pack up your gear, collect your media releases, end on pleasant terms, and load out. Your safety pass. You're going to look for floors that are wet, possibly in a restaurant or in a garden center. Anything that's cluttered, if it's a bookstore and there are books all over the place. Look for safe travel paths. Try to just be aware of where there's clutter on the floor so that you avoid those spots. And look for unsafe spots, especially if you're in an old building or a building that's being renovated. Power. Ask them where to plug in. Don't assume that an outlet works. Ask them where's a good place to set up for a main interview. Try to use low power lights that don't draw a lot of power. The possibility of blowing a fuse. You don't want to blow a fuse in an old building. That would not be a good thing for your relationship with your client. And you're going to want to check your audio for any hums with electrical interference. Watch out for low-hanging bump your head on, such as light fixtures or decorations that are hanging down. And be aware of heat sources like hot lights or ovens or display cases or heaters. You might want to bring work gloves in case you have to unscrew a light bulb in order to make a safe condition. For setup for your main interview, you're going to want to find a quiet area. And often you have to schedule for this. Very often I would shoot main interviews before or after hours in an office or a conference room. It's nice to get a picturesque location, but you want to make sure that they're not backlit, that there's not anything bright light behind them. And you want to check for noise from fans. If there's an exhaust in the area, like in a conference room, if there's an air conditioning exhaust, sometimes you might have to ask them to turn the AC off during the interview just to prevent that noise, because it will be very noticeable with good microphones. And also, fluorescent lights will often create a buzz or a hum that you just don't notice until you stand very still and quiet and you listen. LED lights don't produce that, and a lot of people have switched to LED lighting, but if it's an older building, then you might have to contend with that. When you set up your main interview, just 2 simple chairs facing across from each other, not too far apart, not too close together. Then you set up your lights around those 2 chairs. Then you set up your camera. Then you need to ask to attach the lavalier microphone. You're going to want to hide the transmitter for the microphone in their pocket or belt, hide the wires, and use medical tape or moleskin pads to secure those wires under clothing, or give them the tape and ask them to reach under their clothing to secure cords. Always be very careful with that, especially when dealing with people of the opposite gender. Okay, once you're both sitting down, you're going to want to check your shot and adjust for headroom. The vertical headroom, make sure there's not too much vertical headroom. About a handspan between the top of the head and the top of the frame is good. The look space, the horizontal room, needs to have more space in the direction that the person is looking than away from the person is looking. Look for distracting elements you might have missed on setup, such as bright signs or pictures or anything that's going to attract someone's attention, and try to remove those just for the shot and then replace them after the interview. Lighting may need adjustment at this point. You may need to adjust your bounce card, or your secondary lighting, or you may want to reposition the main light if it's glaring. And if people are wearing glasses and you can see the light in their glasses, you may want to reposition the light so that you reflecting in their glasses. Then you're going to want to check your audio, ask them a chatty question about the store so that you can check your audio levels, and always, always, always use headphones, and make sure that your audio headphone, the audio for your headphones is comfortable, but also pay attention to your audio meters in your camera, because sometimes the signal going into your camera may be a lot stronger than what you're actually hearing in your headphones. If your headphones are turned down, but the signal going into your camera is really high and you're peaking into the red zone, you're going to want to dial that back and then just adjust the audio of your headphones after you know that you're not getting audio that's too loud. For lighting, you're going to want a light kit of some sort, even if it's just a light kit in your head of how to use natural light. It's a good idea to use light shapers and modifiers, diffusion. Be aware of the need for power, and always take extra extension cords with gaffer tape to tape your cords down. If you don't have any lights, natural lighting, use a big window for soft light. Be aware of direct sunlight. You can get white foam core or the back of a poster taped to a vertical object on the opposite side of the person from the main light to bounce light from the main light source onto the shadows in the person's face as that secondary light. With good microphones, with a windscreen, you can shoot your interview outdoors under shade as long as that windscreen is on your microphone to make sure that you don't get noise, because that's terrible and you won't be able to edit that out. You can borrow or rent a light kit, but if you have a lighting budget, I'd advise you to buy a good 3-light LED kit. They've gotten really inexpensive now. The quality of the LED light kits, even for inexpensive light kits, is quite good. Now, as you're doing lighting, if you're sitting across from a subject, I want you to think, if the main light, such as a window, is on your left, your camera should be on the opposite side, so it would be on the right. Very often, because camera viewfinders flip out to the left, it's a good idea to sit to the left of the camera so the camera will be on your right. That way it's easy for you to see the viewfinder. But if that's the case, if the camera's on your right, then the main light needs to be on the left, with the bounce light or the bounce card being on the same side of the person as the camera. This way the subject will always be looking toward you. They'll always be looking at the main light, and that's the 180 rule for interviews. The main light should be raised above the subject so that they aren't staring into a light, because that can have both visual benefits in terms of glare and they're not squinting, and also psychological benefits so they don't feel like they're on trial or under the spotlight. The best option is an LED light bank with diffusion, a softbox on an LED light. But a good substitute is a China ball style paper lantern with one bright light in it, either cool daylight or warmer soft yellow light, depending on your internal situation. In other words, if there are a lot of windows, you're going to want a daylight balanced bulb. But if it's indoors and all the lighting is controlled, especially if there are lamp style lights or tungsten lights, then you would use the softer light. But the paper lanterns with a fixture and an LED bulb, it's often a really good substitute when you don't have an expensive LED light bank. Audio. Wireless microphones are great, and the best wireless microphones, in my opinion, are Electrosonics, but they're very expensive. Sennheiser is what most of the TV stations use. Sennheiser wireless microphones are very good. But for most people who are first getting into multimedia production, Rode has become sort of the go-to solution for professional quality microphones. They are less expensive than Sennheiser, but the quality is almost indistinguishable for the average person. There are a lot of cheap wireless microphone solutions for cell phones now. I just did a search on the web, and I saw one that had a lightning connector to plug in as the receiver, and 2 little microphones come with it, one for each person in a 2-person interview, and that's a fantastic solution. It may not be at the highest quality, but it's definitely better than just trying to use the microphones built into the phone. Always, 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 if you have a better microphone, bring fresh batteries, install fresh batteries. Wired lavaliers, I have used Sony wired lavaliers, but you need an XLR cable. XLR cables have to be used with professional cameras if you're using wired lavaliers. XLR cables, what are they? Well, X stands for the ground wire, left stands for the L stands for left audio, right stands for right audio. So in every microphone cable that's an XLR cable, you have this round capsule on the end with 3 prongs, the X, the L, and the R, and you get better sound over long distances, and you can run power to your professional microphones. There's a 48-volt phantom power switch on professional cameras that when you turn that on, it sends a power to the microphone. So if you're using that, for example, on a shotgun microphone, make sure that the shotgun microphone does not have a battery inside the microphone, because that could cause problems. For consumer audio, very often a 1/8 audio jack is what that will have, like a headphone jack. It looks very much like a headphone jack, and but those are not phantom power. Those are not powered. They don't have the phantom power option. Cameras. This is a big discussion. The main thing you want to think about is your support for your camera. First, you want a good tripod for the formal interview, and then either a tripod or a monopod or some other support for B-roll. Miller tripods are the best. They're very expensive. TV stations use those. Gitzo is another professional tripod maker. Those are big and heavy. But I find that the Manfrotto tripods are really good, and very often they're lighter. I've invested in one that had carbon fiber legs and have been using it for the last more than 10 years, and it's still working. And there are other companies that have sort of become clones or knockoffs of Manfrotto that are also good and cheaper. For video, you definitely want a fluid head. There's actual gel or fluid inside the head that makes it smoothly pan and tilt. You won't find that on a photo tripod. When you set up your tripod for your main shot, you want to level the camera. Now, if your tripod has a bowl head, then you can level the camera quickly with the legs fixed. But if not, then you're going to have to adjust the legs one at a time to achieve that horizontal leveling when you're setting up your shot. That's very important to do when you're setting up your camera, so that you're not so that the entire shot is not shot at an angle, because then you'll have to rebalance that inside a professional video editing program, and that's difficult because you'll have to crop. So it's often good to have someone come and sit in place of the person who's going to be interviewed while you set up your shot, and that way you can level your camera, you can set up your lights, you can test your audio, and all that. Other supports for a camera include gimbals. These are handheld apparatus that allow you to float the camera, and if you're using your cell phone as your main video camera, these are quite lightweight, and they can provide more stabilization than hand holding the camera. The DJI Osmo for mobile phones is one that's had several iterations. Some of the older models of that can be cheaper if you're trying to save some money. And there's another one that I recently saw that's made by Insta360. That's an Insta360 mobile phone gimbal. But the gimbal is designed to keep the camera steady while you move around holding it by hand. For drones, I highly advise you, if you want to get a drone shot, or if the client wants a drone shot, that you hire a licensed drone operator and then just charge the client. Because of FAA licensure issues, safety issues, if there's a crash of the drone, if it's yours, it's expensive and time-consuming to repair. If you crash it into a person, well, then you're looking at a lawsuit. So I just highly recommend that you hire a licensed drone videography. The fluid head monopod is my all-in-one replacement for sliders, dollies, and jibs, which create that smooth cinematic camera look that you're trying to get in your B-roll, and I've demonstrated that in previous weeks. Okay, talking about the camera, are you going to use a video camera, a DSLR, or a cinema camera? Well, video cameras do have advantages. They're built for long interviews. They have deep depth of field, so everything in the background is going to be in focus due to the smaller sensor of the video camera. The zoom lens is built in. The controls are designed for easy access while you're shooting, and usually all the controls you need are outside of the camera. You won't have to go into a menu. And it's just an all-in-one package with XLR audio inputs, easy to connect to wireless microphone, and it's just designed for quick shooting, grab it and go. DSLRs, benefits there, obviously the shallow depth of field. Because of the much larger sensor, you have interchangeable lenses, so you can get some really interesting lens effects. It's also good for getting great photos, which you can use for pan and scan. Very often you can shoot really nice photography that really captures what you're going for with a photo instead of with video. Sometimes there can be a better sensor, better color, better images, and the smaller form factor of a DSLR is definitely less threatening than a video camera, even if it's a small video camera. People see a video camera, they think, oh, I'm going to be on video. But if they see a DSLR or a still camera, they just think, oh, or we're just taking pictures. So they're not psychologically in the same anxiety space. So that can work in your favor. But there are disadvantages. We talked about the disadvantage with a video camera. It's harder to get that blurry background or the shallow depth of field look, and the form factor can be intimidating. Problems with DSLR, well, there are many. It doesn't have pro audio connections. Often it doesn't have a good viewfinder. It doesn't have a handle on top to pick it up by. You have to swap lenses. It's not weatherproof. The controls can be hidden deep in the menus, and you have recording limits on some DSLRs. You really have to know what you're doing to use one of these like a video camera and be experienced, although there are improvements that are coming along to make that easier. The cinema camera was the sort of solution to these the problems of having video versus DSLR. So they created cinema cameras that have XLR inputs. They have an internal fan to combat overheating. They do have good monitors, no recording limits, and they're often available with a good zoom in a kit like the 24-105L lens from Canon. But they do have to be assembled on site. They're not designed to just pull up out of a bag and start shooting like a video camera. Interviews. I've conducted a number of interviews, hundreds of interviews over the course of a career, and what I'd like to talk to you about now is the ins and outs of interviews, setting up for the interview, and then what do you do once you're ready to shoot. For your main interview, you're going to want to be seated face-to-face. Your subject is well lit with the camera on a tripod. You might even have a secondary camera on another tripod for tighter shots, and it should be to the right of your main camera. That's the 180 rule. Cords should be made safe. Your microphones are out of shot, are not distracting. There's nothing distracting in the shot. The shot is not backlit. There's nothing bright behind the subject. And it's usually a medium shot, which is from the chest up with adequate headroom. Make sure to check your audio levels. They should be peaking between -6 and -12 dB, or at least not into the red if you don't have the numbers on there. If all you see is the color indicator of the audio, then just make sure you're not peaking into the red. And if you are, then dial back the audio signal a little bit. And then hit record. Well, then what do you do? Here's how to prepare your subject for the interview psychologically. The first thing you should say after you start recording is just thank you very much for sitting down with me. Thank you for this interview. I really appreciate it. That's just a very pleasant, polite way to get started. And then always, always, always say these words. Please say your name and spell it so I get the graphics right. Okay? You would be surprised how many people with normal sounding names have a unique spelling. They want to see it correctly on camera, and you want to make sure you don't have to edit it and make a correction. While they're saying their name, check your audio levels, not peeking into the red zone. After you do that, after they give you your name and spell it, say, thanks, okay, now please just look at me and pretend like there's no camera. We're just going to have a conversation. This does several things. It lowers the general anxiety because you're telling them that you're not in an interview, it's just a conversation. You're telling them what to say, which is just talk normally, and where to look. Pretend like there's no camera, look at me. And then you say, and don't worry, I always cut out anything I need to cut. to make sure that you look and sound your best on camera. The way you frame that phrase eliminates all worries about their performance, and you don't say, "Don't worry, I always cut out any mistakes you might make," because that doesn't sound good, and it kind of might be insulting if they say, "Well, how do you know I'm going to make mistakes?" Maybe you might trample on their ego just a little bit. So it's always good to say, "I always cut out anything I need to cut," and that takes it that makes you sound more professional and doesn't reflect badly on them. This is the general structure that I recommend for these types of interviews, especially with the owner of a business. The what, so what, now what model. It's easy to remember. It's only 3 parts. The what gives you the basic facts. The what gives you the why, the emotion. And the now what is once the viewer has connected through emotion to the facts, what do they need to do next? Introduction. You're going to say, tell me about yourself. Tell me about you. Tell me the who. That's the who. The what? Well, tell me about your business. What do you want to talk about? What do you want to tell me? Why are we here today? And the how. How did you do this? How did you build this business? How did you get started? Where? Tell me about the location. Tell me about where we are right now. What's special about this location? And why did you pick this place? And the when. So tell me about the history of your business. Did anybody in your family, are you the first business person, or did you inherit this? Tell me about any upcoming events that you have. Is there anything that you want to specifically advertise? You're going to have a big event coming up. Tell me about your store hours. Tell me about the biggest milestones that you've experienced in this business. The when is also important. So the who, what, how, where, and when, that gives you all the basic facts about why you're there. And once you kind of warm them up, then let's go a little bit deeper and let's get into why. So what tells the viewer why. So you tell the viewer why they should care by asking the business owner about why they care. Going deeper, activating the emotion and the passion of the person that you're talking to will create a sense of authenticity that connects viewers to the subject and to the story of the business, so the viewer wants to become part of that story and help them out. So you say things like, so tell me, what is it about all this that keeps you coming back to work, or that gets you up in the morning to come to work? And then it sounds like you really have a passion for this. How did that start? Tell me more about your passion for this. And then the feedback that customers give business owners often energizes them, and that's part of the reason why they keep coming back, is because of the relationships that they form. So what do your customers say to you about all of this? What are you hearing? What's the feedback? And then why would you recommend that customers come here? And this can help you segue into the now what. Call to action. How can people watching this connect with you? What do you want the viewers to do next after they watch this video? What do you hope they do? And this is where you want to make sure to get the phone number, the email, the website, the store location, event location, whatever, and get them to say all that on camera in case you lose the business card or the printed material, or you can't find the website. Just have them say it on camera to make it easy for you to get that stuff to build your ending graphics. And then before you go, make sure that you get a good opening shot of the business with a diagonal leading lines, dramatic lines, because if you're shooting a building, it's not very interesting if you shoot it straight on. But if you go to the side and shoot so that there are leading lines maybe pointing down to the sign, it's a more dynamic shot. And make sure you get the logo. So after you've done all that, remember the basic workflow. You've gone through your shot list, you've done your main interview, you're checking to see if anything has changed or anything that they don't want shot. Then you start packing up your gear and collecting your media releases. Find a way to end on good terms with a thank you, and then load out, check your equipment list before you go. Don't leave anything behind. Clothing, bags, gear, anything that you might have moved, make sure you put it back where you. And then finally, we're back to the post-production process we discussed last week. This is where you want to make sure to bring your equipment inside. Don't leave it in your car. If you leave it in your car overnight, it could get stolen. That happened to me once. If you leave it in the daytime, it could overheat. or damage to your equipment, you don't want to leave delicate electronics in a hot car. Just always make sure to bring your equipment in. Even if you've had a long shooting day, take the time to bring your bags in. You'll thank yourself later. And make sure you import your media. Do all that quickly. AirDrop your media from your phone, and transfer any media from your SD card, your compact flash, to your external hard drives, and then go ahead and get started. So at this point, we've gone through the entire location shooting checklist. This is the procedure that I did every time for 10 years when I was doing corporate video, and I hope that this has been helpful and can help you be successful too.